I got first in the whole district on our first statewide practice exam. And nobody in my family was happy about it all because I laughed once at dinner. My dad, who'd always liked my cousin better, lost it. Trevor bombed his practice exam. And you're sitting there laughing. If it weren't for you, Trevor's parents would still be alive. And now you're rubbing your score in his face. He didn't listen to a single thing I said. He shoved me into our home sauna and locked the door from the outside. But I have a heart condition I was born with. I can't handle extreme heat. So I banged on the door and begged. My parents ignored me. They moved into the condo they bought near Trevor's prep school, cleared their schedules, and spent every waking hour helping him study. They forgot I existed. Until exam day, when my homeroom teacher called Mr. and Mrs. Pruitt, "Where's Micah? Why isn't he here for the exam?" They went pale, then raced back to the house. When they saw what was left inside that sauna, they fell apart. I held my chest and tried to breathe. Through the door, I could hear them fussing over Trevor. The new condo means an extra half hour of sleep every morning. Give this exam everything. You've got Trevor only 2 months left. I canceled Micah's tutoring and put the money toward better meals. For you, I didn't have the energy to care about the favoritism anymore. I just kept pounding on the door. "Dad, Mom, help me, my chest hurts so bad." Mom's voice came back flat and cold. "Good, it's supposed to hurt. Who do you think you are showing off in front of Trevor?" Dad sounded angry, but there was something else in it too. Will he really be okay? In their heart attack could actually kill him. He was wavering. I was about to beg again when Trevor cut in all sweetness. "Uncle Richard, he's fine. The sauna is only set to 79. That's basically room temperature." My eyes went wide. He was lying. The floor was already burning my feet. No way it was 79. The heat cut at my skin like knives. I forced my head up and looked at the display. 140 degrees. Dad thought I was faking for attention. He got mad and cranked it up another 18 degrees. More lies. When are you going to be half as decent as Trevor? Sit in there and think about what you did. This is what happens when you lie. Then all three of them got in the car and drove off to the condo, ignoring every sound I made. 158 degrees. I could barely breathe. My heart felt like something was squeezing it, and my smartwatch alarm kept going off. I used everything I had left to crawl toward the wall. There was a big air vent there. It could give me a little room to breathe. My parents installed it when I was small, back when they were scared I might wander in and get stuck. I still don't understand how they became completely different people after Trevor moved in. Out the piano room they built for me and put me in a storage room. They burned every family photo I was in, then took hundreds with Trevor, and because Trevor was scared of dogs, they buried the 3 puppies they bought to make me happy live before him. They used to hold me and call me their treasure, their greatest joy. I was crying and starting to black out when the watch alarm jolted me awake. Someone had blocked the air vent. I opened my mouth like a fish on dry land, trying to pull in anything. Then my phone rang. Dad, the thing was so hot it felt ready to explode. But instinct made me grab it and answer. "Dad, help me, come open the door. Please, I'm going to die." Face on the video call was pure disgust. "Cut it out." Trevor said he gave you the sauna key before he left. "Take pictures of your math notes and send them to him. Math is his weakest subject." Trevor never gave me a key. Before he left, he leaned in close and whispered exactly one thing. Die in there. I could hardly breathe, but I tried to explain. "No, Dad, he didn't give me anything." Still locked in the sauna. "I'm going to die. Please come get me." That made him angrier. He decided I just didn't want Trevor to have my notes. "What is this act? You're smearing Trevor again. Are you scared he'll beat you? You're supposed to be a man, and you're this petty. Send in the notes before I really lose it." I could barely speak, so I flipped the camera to my face. It was red, an unnatural red, like blood might come through the skin. "Dad, look at me." He shut off the video immediately. Furious, then a dramatic sigh from the other end. "Trevor, see, I told you Micah fought me over my stage makeup. The scarlet one. He obviously wanted to smear it on and make you feel sorry for him." Aunt Melissa. "Uncle Richard, go easy on him. He's always pulled these little stunts." Dad said fine 3 times, then made his threat. "If I don't have pictures of those notes in 5 minutes, I'll have Rosa burn every page. You won't share them because you're scared Trevor will outscore you. You're my son. You think I don't know exactly what you are." I shook my head, terrified. Those weren't just notes. That was 3 years of work, everything I needed for the last 2 months of review. Before I could get a word out, he hung up. 5 minutes later, I heard the housekeeper's footsteps. Relief hit me. I'd assumed Rosa went with them to wait on Trevor. My voice shook. "Rosa, please help me." She sounded torn. "Micah, honey, Your parents locked you in there. Don't put me in the middle of this. I pressed my hand to my chest. My heart felt like it was trying to get out. Please, Rosa. You watched me grow up, please. In that house, Mom and Dad only loved Trevor. I thought Rosa was the one person who actually cared. Years ago, during an earthquake, my parents ran outside with Trevor without thinking. Rosa was the one who shook me awake and carried me out barefoot. Finally, she softened. Oh, you poor thing, but your father's in a hurry. Tell me where the notebooks are first so I can finish what he asked. Don't be mad at me. I knew the notes were gone. Either way, but I wanted to live, so I told her where I'd hidden them. Her footsteps faded. The heat was unbearable while I waited. For her, I crawled to the far wall and pressed my whole body against it. That's when I overheard her voice low. Sir, I burned all of Micah's notes. Trevor's guaranteed to beat him. Now, what about Micah? Is he still in the sauna? My heart jumped. Dad might not believe me, but he believed Rosa. Then she said it. No, sir. He's on the couch with a giant tub of ice cream playing video games. I was shaking with rage. Then I remembered the blocked vent. Rosa and I were the only ones in the house. Who else could it have been? Through the narrow gap, I watched her dead bolt the front door, grab her things, and leave. The steam got hotter. My heart was racing out of control. My exposed skin had started splitting open, and there was a smell rising around me. This time I really thought I was dying. With the last of it, I called 911. Fire and ambulance would take at least 20 minutes. I didn't think I had 20 minutes, so I decided to leave a message. Picked up the burning phone and called one last person. Grandma. It's Micah. I miss you so much. I don't think I can hold on this time. Mom and Dad locked me in the sauna because of Trevor. The more I talked, the smaller and more broken my voice got. Grandma, I miss you. You were the only one in this family who loved me. I shouldn't have talked back to you all those times. I was the one who didn't get it. Grandma always loved me most. When I was younger, I thought she was old-fashioned, and I fought with her constantly until we stopped talking. Once I got older, I wanted to apologize. I never found the chance. Nobody answered then. After what felt like forever, someone laughed. Ever again. Sorry, Micah. Grandma's busy making oatmeal for me. She said nobody's allowed to interrupt her when she's cooking for her precious grandson. So she handed me her phone. Oh, and your parents were so desperate for me to beat you that they burned all your study materials and went to school to pull you out of classes for the rest of the term. Aren't you thrilled? Tears ran down the sides of my face. They went that far for him. And I heard Grandma in the background, hopeful. Trevor, who is that? I thought I heard Micah. He answered fast. No, Grandma. He plays video games all day. Why would he think about you? He probably forgotten you exist. She made a small sound. Disappointed, I turned toward the phone and tried to yell, Grandma, it's me, it's Micah. But right then the phone gave out and burst apart in the heat. Fragments cut across my face in the wet heat. The blood wouldn't clot. My breathing slowed. My head got heavy. Through the fog, I heard sirens outside. Anyone in there? Why is this door dead? Bolted. We're here to help. I didn't have the strength to answer. All I could do was lie on that scorching floor and listen. The fire captain's voice sounded familiar. Daniel Mercer. Dad's best friend. Are we sure this is the right address? Micah has to be in trouble. Damn it, why is the door locked? No time, Captain. Whoever's inside is fading. We have to breach now. Daniel's voice went hard. Cutting that security door could take too long. I'll call Richard and get the key. Richard, where's the emergency key to? Your house now. Your son called 911. He's locked in the sauna and he's dying. Dad sounded annoyed. That kid gets bolder every day. Now he's calling in fake emergencies. Trust me, Daniel, turn around. Nothing's wrong, Daniel snapped. Richard, give me the key. We traced the call to the sauna. He has a heart condition. How could you do this? Dad got angrier. He got you to your fire captain, and you let a teenager play you. Aren't you embarrassed? Daniel hung up and ordered his crew to force entry. My vision was going. I don't know if I imagined it, but I could smell cooked meat. I didn't think I'd last until he reached me. Then the sauna door crashed open and Daniel was standing there in a blast of white light. They rushed me into an ambulance. Paramedics covered me in monitors and lines. Nurse leaned over me, close to tears. Don't be scared. I'm here. I'm going to save you. I lay there blank-eyed while she did compressions. Over and over outside the window. Huge fireworks lit up the sky. My parents had arranged them for Trevor's birthday. Sweetheart, you are our whole heart. Strange thing was, I didn't feel sad anymore. I felt something close to relief. Trevor could have them. From that moment on, we were nothing to each other. The birthday motorcade my parents put together for Trevor filled the intersection and brought the ambulance. To a dead stop, every car had a huge lit-up sign, "Happy 18th birthday." Trevor, when one of the nurses saw my face going gray, she jumped out and yelled at the lead convertible, "Do you people know how to drive? This is an ambulance. Someone's dying in here, move." Dad sounded put out. "Can't you see we're having a birthday? Do you know how important an 18th birthday is?" Mom didn't want anything ruining Trevor's mood, so she jumped in too, right? Whoever's in that ambulance isn't family. Why should I care if they live or die? Trevor stood there in a designer suit, soaking up the attention. Some bystanders actually accused the nurse of guilt-tripping the family. She had no choice. She got back in, furious, like he was doing it on purpose. Dad drove at a crawl and kept blocking us. The doctor couldn't take it. He got out and shouted at Dad, "I'm warning you. Deliberately obstructing an ambulance is a crime. If this turns into a criminal case, it could affect your son's college admission." Mom's face shifted. "Let's just move, otherwise Micah might not be able to take his exam. Either he's still our biological son." Only then did Dad nod and wave the convoy aside. The party car and the ambulance passed each other in traffic. One carried a birthday, the other carried a dying kid as they crossed. Dad caught a glimpse of me through the window and frowned. "Am I seeing things? That kid looked a lot like Micah." Mom laughed at him. "You're imagining it." Rosa said, "He's eating ice cream and playing video games." 2 months later, on exam day, my parents dressed up and made a whole production of sending Trevor off outside his testing center. Then my homeroom teacher called Mr. and Mrs. Pruitt. "I need to confirm something. Did you really withdraw Micah, the top-ranked senior in the district, and decide he wouldn't sit for the statewide exam?" They froze. "No, Miss Bennett, we only approved 2 months of leave. He was supposed to be back a week before the exam." They panicked and ran for the car to drive home and find me on the back seat. Was a familiar key ring. It held the only key to the sauna. Mom's voice started shaking. "Didn't Trevor say he gave the only key to Micah?" The key ring felt heavier in my mother's hand than it ever had before. On the back seat of the SUV, sitting amidst silk birthday ribbons and leftover party favors from Trevor's 18th bash, was the heavy iron ring holding the brass master key to the custom-built home sauna. My mother's face drained of color so fast she looked like a ghost. Her breath caught in her throat, a ragged, hitching sound. "Richard," she whispered, her fingers trembling so violently the key clinked against the metal tumbler. Trevor said he gave Micah the key before he left. He said Micah was pretending." My father's knuckles turned bone white against the steering wheel. "He did give him the key. Micah was lying. He's always pulling stunts like this to make us feel guilty for supporting Trevor." "Then why is the key here, Richard?" my mother screamed, her voice cracking into a high-pitched, hysterical shriek. "Why is it on your keychain?" The silence inside the luxury car became deafening. My father slammed his foot onto the gas pedal. The engine roared, tires screeching as he threw the car into a desperate, illegal U-turn, heading straight back to the primary estate. When they pulled into the long, iron-gated driveway 30 minutes later, they weren't greeted by the quiet grandeur of our family home. They were greeted by thick, yellow police tape fluttering in the wind, red and blue strobe lights painting the marble pillars of the entryway, and 3 unmarked detective cruisers parked on the lawn. My father threw the car into park and leaped out, my mother stumbling behind him in her designer heels. "What is the meaning of this?" my father bellowed, trying to brush past a uniformed officer standing guard at the front doors. "This is my property. Where is my son? Where is Micah?" A tall, broad-shouldered man in a dark navy fire department uniform stepped out of the front foyer. His face was lined with deep, heavy exhaustion, his eyes burning with an icy, lethal rage. It was Daniel Mercer, my father's lifelong best friend, the fire captain. "You're 2 months late asking that, Richard," Daniel said. His voice was terrifyingly calm, devoid of any warmth they had shared for 30 years. "Daniel, what are you talking about?" my mother sobbed, clutching at his arm. "The teacher called. Micah wasn't at the statewide exam. We thought he was home, playing video games," Rosa said. "Rosa is currently in an interrogation room at the precinct, facing charges of attempted murder and destruction of evidence," Daniel interrupted sharply. He stepped aside, gesturing toward the interior of the house. "Why don't you come? Take a look at what you left behind." My parents rushed into the foyer, but as they rounded the corner toward the hallway leading to the sauna, my mother stopped dead in her tracks, vomiting directly onto the hardwood floor. The heavy, soundproof cedar door of the sauna had been completely chopped off. its hinges by a heavy rescue axe. The frame was charred and melted. But it wasn't just the wood. Inside, the digital control panel was scorched black, locked at 158 degrees Fahrenheit. The floorboards near the far wall were covered in dark, rusted, dried streaks of blood where my skin had split open from the intense radiant heat. Beside the metal bench lay the shattered, blackened remnants of my exploded smartwatch and phone, fused into the melted cedar. And right over the small air intake vent near the floor was a heavy, rubber-backed thermal bath mat, jammed so tightly into the grate that no air could pass through. He was really in here, my father stammered, his body swaying as if he were about to faint. No, it was a joke. He was pretending. Trevor said. Trevor lied. And you were too stupid, too cruel, and too blind to care. Daniel said, stepping up right behind my father. He pulled a thick, clear evidence bag out of his jacket. Inside was the digital log extracted from our homes. Smart thermostat hub by forensic techs. 140 degrees at 2 p.m., Daniel read aloud, his voice cutting like a razor. 158 degrees at 2:15 p.m. when you manually adjusted it from your phone, Richard. The vent was blocked from the outside. The deadbolt was thrown from the outside. He was in there for over an hour and 45 minutes with an irregular heartbeat condition that you knew he had since birth. Is he alive? My mother gasped, sinking to her knees, clawing at Daniel's trousers. Daniel, please. Tell me my baby is alive. Daniel looked down at her with pure disgust. 2 months ago, Daniel said, an ambulance carrying a 17-year-old boy with third-degree thermal burns, severe heat stroke, and acute heart failure was blocked on 5th Avenue by an 18-car birthday parade. Do you remember that parade, Melissa? My mother's face went entirely slack. Her eyes widened in absolute, paralyzing horror as the memory hit her like a freight train. Who do you think you are? Whoever's in that ambulance isn't family. Why should I care if they live or die? Those were the exact words she had screamed at the paramedic through the car window while Trevor stood on the hood of the convertible, waving at his friends. That was Micah, Daniel whispered, leaning down until he was inches from my father's ear. You blocked your own son's emergency transport so your nephew could blow out his candles. You killed him that day, Richard. As far as the law, God, and Micah are concerned, you killed your own child. I didn't die that afternoon, though there were 3 distinct times in the ICU where my heart stopped completely. When Daniel Mercer's crew dragged my unconscious body out of that wooden coffin, my core body temperature was 107.2 degrees. My lungs were scorched from inhaling steam, my skin was covered in deep heat blisters, and my heart was in severe ventricular fibrillation. I spent 3 weeks in a medically induced coma at the Regional Burn and Trauma Center. When I finally woke up, my vision was blurry, and every inch of my body felt as if it were wrapped in barbed wire. The first person I saw sitting beside my bed wasn't a doctor. It was my grandmother. She looked 20 years older. Her face was hollow, her eyes red and swollen. When she saw my eyelids flutter open, a sob broke from her chest that sounded like a tear in the universe. Micah. She wept, gently reaching out, her hand hovering over mine, afraid to touch my bandaged skin. Oh, my sweet boy, my precious treasure. I couldn't speak. The ventilator tube had scraped my throat raw, but I looked at her, and a single tear slipped down my temple. Over the next few days, as my throat healed enough for me to whisper, the truth came out. The day I was trapped in the sauna, when I called my grandmother's phone in my final moments, Trevor had answered. Trevor had muted the line, laughed into the speaker, lied to my grandmother that I was off playing video games, and then deleted the incoming call log from her phone before handing it back to her while she was making him breakfast. It wasn't until Daniel Mercer personally walked into my grandmother's house 2 days after I was admitted to the ICU with a warrant to secure my legal guardianship that the illusion completely shattered. When my grandmother found out what Trevor had done, what my parents had been doing to me for the past 2 years, moving me to a storage room, burning my childhood photos, shooting my puppies, and leaving me to roast alive, she didn't just get angry. She cut them off entirely. She revoked the trust fund she had set up for Trevor. She tore up the deed to the prep school condo she had bought for my parents. She hired the most ruthlessly aggressive prosecution team in the state to ensure every single person involved went to prison. I thought I was helping an orphan, my grandmother whispered to me one night in the hospital room, holding my bandaged hand and weeping bitterly. I thought Trevor was a traumatized boy who needed extra love after his parents died.
I
Didn't see. I was so blind, Micah. I let that viper into our home. And he poisoned your mother and father.
but they
They were willing drinks for his
poison.
I will never forgive them. Never. Back at the primary estate on exam day, the nightmare for my parents was only just beginning. While my mother was still on her knees vomiting on the hallway floor, two state troopers stepped into the house and placed handcuffs on my father's wrists. Richard Pruitt, you are under arrest for attempted murder, felony child endangerment, and destruction of evidence, the lead officer declared.
Cold-bloodedly. Wait. No.
This is a mistake, my father screamed, struggling against the restraints. My nephew, he told us. Your nephew is currently being pulled out of his exam room at St. Jude's Academy, the detective interrupted calmly. We have the audio recording of the 911 call. We have the smartwatch cloud data that recorded your voice at the sauna door telling him to sit in there and think about what he did. We have the smart thermostat logs showing you raised the heat to 158 degrees.
And we
Have Rosa's signed confession. Rosa, my mother gasped, her hair wild, her makeup smeared across her pale
face.
Rosa wouldn't. Rosa confessed 45 minutes ago, Daniel Mercer said coldly.
She
Confessed that Trevor paid her $5,000 out of your personal bank account to block the air vent. She confessed that she watched him tamper with the sauna lock days before. And she confessed that she lied to you about Micah playing video games because Trevor promised her a massive bonus once he secured the family inheritance. My mother let out a guttural sound, the sound of a woman watching her entire world, her entire lie, crumble into radioactive ash. They dragged my father out in handcuffs in front of all our neighbors. My mother was arrested 20 minutes later as an accomplice. At the elite prep school 30 miles away, the door to the high school examination hall was kicked open in the middle of the statewide exam. Trevor was sitting at a front desk, staring blankly at the complex calculus and advanced physics section. Without my 3 years of meticulously organized notes, without the tutoring sessions my parents had canceled for me to pay for his private prep coaches, Trevor was completely lost. He had already guessed on half the paper and was sweating profusely. When the two armed officers walked down the aisle toward his desk, the entire room went dead silent. Trevor Vance, the officer asked. Trevor's smug, arrogant face turned a sickly shade of green. I'm taking a state exam. You can't interrupt this. My uncle is Richard Pruitt. He'll fire you. Your uncle is currently in a holding cell, the officer replied, grabbing Trevor by the collar of his expensive suit jacket and hauling him out of his
chair.
You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and felony obstruction of justice. The students gasped. Cameras on cell phones were secretly pulled out. Within 2 hours, video of Trevor being dragged out of the exam hall, crying and blubbering like a toddler, was trending across every social media platform in the state. 2 months later, the trial did not take long. With the overwhelming mountain of digital evidence, forensic data, smartwatch cloud recordings, and Rosa's confession, there was no defense my parents' expensive lawyers could construct. My grandmother made sure of that. She spent millions hiring former state prosecutors to assist the district attorney. She stripped my father of his position at the family firm, froze all joint assets, and listed the primary estate for liquidation, donating every single cent of the proceeds to a children's burn foundation. I sat in the front row of the courtroom on the day of the sentencing. I was wearing a dark tailor-made suit that concealed the thick compression garments beneath. My heart condition had been stabilized through a complex surgical procedure performed by the top cardiothoracic surgeon in the country. A procedure my grandmother personally funded. I was pale and I moved with a slight stiffness, but I was alive. I was whole. Beside me sat Captain Daniel Mercer and my grandmother, both holding my hands. When my parents and Trevor were led into the courtroom in bright orange jumpsuits and wrist chains, the contrast was shocking. My father looked like a broken old man. His hair had turned entirely gray, his posture stooped, his face sunken. My mother was crying hysterically, her eyes desperately searching the gallery until they landed on me. When she saw me sitting there, alive, elegant, quiet, she let out a strangled
Gasp.
Micah, she wailed, reaching her chained hands toward me. Micah, my baby. Look at me. Please tell them. Tell them it was a mistake. We were fooled. Trevor Tricked us. We loved you, Micah. You're our treasure. I looked at her. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel hatred. I felt an absolute, terrifying emptiness. My father fell to his knees in front of the defense table, tears streaming down, his face into his beard. Micah, please, son. I'm your father. I made a
Mistake.
I was angry about your cousin. I didn't know the key was on my ring. I swear I didn't know. Forgive me. Don't let them take us away. Trevor sat beside them, his hands shaking, glaring at me with a mixture of terrified desperation and festering hatred.
Micah, we're brothers, man. You.
No, I didn't mean it. It was a joke. I didn't know the heat was that high. The judge slammed his gavel down hard 3 times. Silence in the court. When the room quieted down, the judge turned to me. Micah Pruitt.
As the
Victim, you have the right to deliver a victim impact statement before sentencing is passed. Do you wish to speak? I stood up slowly. Daniel offered me his arm, but I shook my head gently.
I
Walked up to the podium, pulled a single sheet of paper from my jacket pocket, and adjusted the microphone. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear the tick of the wall clock. I didn't look at my notes. I looked straight into my parents' eyes. When I was 6 years old, I began, my voice clear and steady, echoing through the high ceilings of the courtroom. My father bought me a tiny wooden sailboat. We spent 3 weeks painting it together in the garage. When my mother tucked me in at night, she used to tell me that out of all the stars in the sky, I was the only one that mattered to her. My mother burst into fresh, violent sobs, burying her face in her hands. I spent years trying to figure out what I did wrong. I continued.
when
Trevor's parents died, I welcomed him into our house. I thought I was getting a brother, but instead, I watched my parents erase me. They moved me into a closet. They burned my infant pictures. They buried 3 living puppies in the backyard because Trevor didn't like dogs. And I let them do it because I thought if I worked hard enough, if I got the top score in the district, if I made them proud, they would remember that they used to love me. My father was shaking so violently, his chains clinked loudly against the wooden table. But on the day you locked me in that sauna, I said, my voice dropping to a icy, measured cadence, you didn't just lock away a boy who got first place on
an exam.
You locked away the last piece of humanity you had left. You turned up the heat to 158 degrees. You blocked my air vent. You ignored my heart condition. And when I called you begging for my life, you told me to send math notes. I turned my eyes to Trevor. And you, I said softly. You whispered, die in there before you shut the
Door.
You told my grandmother I was playing video games while my blood was boiling against cedar wood. Trevor flinched, pulling back as if struck. I used to think my heart was weak because of a birth defect, I said, looking back at my parents. But sitting in that dark, burning room, listening to the fireworks you set off for Trevor's birthday while my ambulance was stuck in traffic, I realized something. My heart isn't weak. Yours are. Yours were dead a long time ago. I folded the paper and put it back into my pocket. I don't hate you, I said calmly. Hatred requires feeling something for you. Today, when I walk out of this courtroom, you cease to exist to me. You are not my mother. You are not my father. You are just 3 strangers who are going to spend a very long time in a very cold place. I turned my back on them and walked back to my seat. Micah.
No.
Micah. My mother screamed, trying to leap over the table before 2 bailiffs tackled her to the floor, pinning her arms behind her back.
Don't.
Leave me. Micah. Please. My father buried his face in his hands on the desk, weeping uncontrollably, his shoulders heaving with pathetic, useless regret. Clear his throat, his face grim. Richard Pruitt, the judge declared. For the charges of attempted murder, criminal child endangerment, and destruction of evidence, you are sentenced to 25 years in state prison without the possibility of parole. Melissa Pruitt. For accessory to attempted murder and child abuse, you are sentenced to 18 years in state prison. Trevor Vance. As a legal adult at the time of the offense, for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and witness tampering, you are sentenced to 15 years in a maximum security state penitentiary. Rosa Gomez. For reckless endangerment and bribery, you are sentenced to 8 years. The gavel came down with a thunderous bang. 1 year later, the summer air was crisp and fresh as I stood on the manicured lawn of Columbia University, holding a leather folder containing my enrollment confirmation. Because of the severe trauma and medical leave the State Board of Education had granted me a special, solitary retake of the statewide standardized exam 6 months prior. I hadn't just placed first in the district again. I had achieved the highest score in the entire history of the state board, earning a full academic scholarship to every top university in the country. Beside me stood my grandmother, looking elegant in a light beige coat, her smile warm and bright. Beside her was Daniel Mercer, who had officially become my legal guardian before I turned 18, treating me like the son he never had. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was an automated notification from the State Department of Corrections. Once a month, prisoners were allowed one legal request form to contact estranged family members. I opened the app.
There were 2 pending requests.
One from inmate number 48291, Richard Pruitt, containing a single message. Please, Micah, just visit once. I'm dying inside. One from inmate number 48292, Melissa Pruitt, my treasure. Please write back. Trevor lied to us. We love you. And a news clip attached from a local paper. Trevor Vance dropped out of prison. Education module after failing basic remedial math. Transfer to general. Population approved. I looked at the screen for a second. The sun was shining over the university quad, casting long, beautiful shadows across the marble steps. The air was cool, filling my lungs easily, my heart beating steady and strong in my chest. I didn't open the messages. I didn't feel a sting of sadness, nor a flash of triumph. I simply pressed block sender, swiped the notification away, and slipped the phone back into my pocket. Ready for lunch, kiddo? Daniel asked, clapping a warm, heavy hand on my shoulder. Yeah, I smiled, looking up at the clear blue sky. I'm ready,